junglers are gone already, with Elise and Zac removed from the champion pool.
Interestingly as well, Splyce did pick red side here, so they've decided that they want to be on that side of the Summoner's Rift to start us off. Fiora is the next ban coming out from ROCCAT. No real surprises there.
I expect to see Splyce pick red side more often than not, because it will give them at least one winning lane matchup when you look at top or mid. Then they typically will pick the last pick in rotation one as the other. And that's one of the reasons why we see this Fiora ban, is they've actually been comfortable playing it into a lot of champions, with Twitch off the board here as well. It's another pick that worked out incredibly well for Cobby and Splyce last week.
Still a lot of possibilities for both of these teams, though. Of course, we are on 7.12, so a few changes that do affect champion pool. Rakan taken away by Splyce, as we said. The supports love him.
You got to look for Thresh first here, maybe as one pickup that ROCCAT could opt towards. Also looking at the jungle matchup, Lee Sin up in priority with now Kha'Zix, Zac, Elise banned away. So all of this kind of is painting the picture of these early game priority champions coming from Splyce.
We did with 3 wins out of his 5 games on that Thresh. Senkuk, someone we mentioned a little bit earlier on. Interesting champion pool for him, something we don't see a lot of the other mid laners in Europe playing at the moment, the Malzahar, the Kassadins.
He's actually got the widest champion pool, and it includes everything that you would normally see out of mid lane, plus some more that we're showing you here on screen, the Kassadins, the Aurelion Souls, that Malzahar coming back into the fray. But Splyce may very well prioritize this as pick number 3 in their rotation if they end up looking towards Senkuk's. But looking at what they have picked up already, this Zyra early on, matchup into Thresh, you can spawn the plants to deny the hook as engage. It's tricky, and we're delving deep into the jungle pool. So deep, perhaps we're burrowing underground.
Oh, stress. We've already got 2 puns in. I need to catch up with you throughout this game. But yes, as you say, it's the Rek'Sai being picked up here for Trashy, something we used to see a lot of the time. Got changed on 7.12 as well.
Yeah, and the adjustments to Rek'Sai on previous patches. We're going to see an unorthodox jungle matchup here as the Warwick was picked up. We'll touch on some of the recent changes for both champions when we get into the game. But this is an exciting one. One of the first times we're seeing Rek'Sai here in Europe. Seen it a couple of times in LCK and LPL.
Not always had the best of impacts in LCK and LPL, so I'm sure Trashy will want to be playing slightly better as part of this team. Now, it is the Warwick for Pride Stalker and Betsy. It's locked in this Kalista for ROCCAT. A time-old combination, an age-old combination is that Kalista Thresh bottom lane. Yeah,
it's a great bottom lane duo, as is the Splyce bottom lane here. Varus, Zyra, a lot of push power. You can just push back the Kalista, the Thresh, but look at what Splyce and ROCCAT really have left to phase 2. We're going into the solo lanes now in phase 2, and with Kennen banned away for the side of Splyce, ROCCAT, you've got to look towards those Kassadins that we were talking about earlier. Maybe take them off the board and not allow Splyce to pick a matchup that favors Senkuk's as the last pick.
Especially since Betsy's pool is very different to a lot of mid laners in Europe. He tends to play the Swain or the Vladimir, things that you can kind of expect a little bit more. Splyce can leave that counter matchup up to last as well if they want to.
And the thing is, if Betsy were to go Vlad, that gives Kassadin such an easy matchup, because you just wait. You just wait alongside the Vlad, and suddenly you get to the late game and you go, okay, well, I'm Kassadin in the late game, and if I picked up any gold or kills, I'm going to destroy everybody. But this whole second phase, apart from Galio being a flex, has been all around that top lane. Now, Kled is a massive pick for Splyce, but we haven't seen much out of Faxi. Likely to be the Gnar, if anything, being played into the Rumble. It's a matchup we've seen Faxi take time and time again, and it's a pick that he does very well on, typically.
That he does. It is the Rumble, as you say, for Splyce. Still seeing him picked in the top lane, even though he had some alterations, perhaps nerfs on 7.12. ROCCAT now have their mid laner and their top laner to pick. Syndra, a very safe mid, and something we've seen Betsy play 3 times already this split.
With that Gnar picked up alongside it, now we look to where Senkuk's wants to go. This is not a 1-3-1 setup around the top lane anymore, but with Corki available, we may very well just see that side lane push and move Talia, very similar style champion. I almost feel like Corki may be able to do a little better than Talia, but we've seen Senkuk's put up some massive numbers on Talia in the series here in the summer split already, so I think either way, they actually have that advantageous matchup. One thing that Talia will prevent in a team fight, Kalista suddenly becomes a lot less willing to jump around when that minefield gets laid out. So Splyce running around with the Rumble, the Talia, a little different from what we've seen out of them in previous weeks, whereas ROCCAT looking for that Gnar for the side lane control up against Wonder.
I'm really intrigued to see how Faxi plays this week as well, because last week, even though ROCCAT did win their series, he struggled a lot at points. I think that's a fair thing to say. Had the most deaths of any player in the European LCS since Cotton X in 2014, a long, long time ago. But ROCCAT still on a winning spree. They've started their winning spree early this split. 2 games into it, we'll be looking to extend that to 3 over Splyce here today. It's a testing series for both of these teams, and it's the time at which they have to prove their mettle as well, Stress.
Right, and that's where these cross-group matches have this weird, you know, properties of transit, whatever the word is, where somebody beats somebody, so that means they're better, right? So if ROCCAT beat Fnatic, who are the top of Group A,
Fnatic beat H2K.
and Fnatic beat H2K, but then Splyce beat Unicorns, does that mean if ROCCAT win this, then Group A is definitely better?
Well, we'll have to find out to see if they are going to win it. We're going to get onto the Summoner's Rift for the first game between ROCCAT and Splyce. A battle for playoffs for ROCCAT, and perhaps the start of the road to Worlds for Splyce.
Yeah, you have to look at Splyce's position right now, especially with that H2K loss yesterday. A win here would put Splyce temporarily top of Group B, relying on the Unicorns series later today against G2. So Splyce could end up today top of Group B, undisputed.
And it is very much a return to form for them as well. A lot of people have been looking at them and saying, where's the Splyce of the olden days? Where's the Splyce that made it to Worlds? A little bit like H2K in that respect. And now, yesterday we saw H2K fall short at their hurdle against Fnatic. Today, perhaps we'll see Splyce be able to leap over the first hurdle on the race that is the road to Worlds for them.
Well, ROCCAT seem to be a big hurdle depending on how you are doing coming into this, because they tend to beat the teams at the top. So if Splyce are challenging for it, maybe that's enough. But as we head into the game, looking at particular matchups, I think the jungle matchup, no surprise, with Warwick versus Rek'Sai is a very fun one here. So Rek'Sai did have a couple of changes to the ultimate, and some of the damage moved around on the kit a little bit more when it comes to some of the earlier clears. So expect the same things we used to see out of the Rek'Sai. Fast early clear, good ability to get into lane, and that's something that Warwick not quite so good until level 6. So we have to look at whether Trashy can utilize the ganking potential on Rek'Sai earlier.
Especially Pride Stalker on Warwick as well. Actually has the lowest DPM of any Warwick player in the EU LCS. 48 damage per minute. I think minions might do slightly more than that if I remember my calculations, but it's quite a substantial amount less. Now we need to see him really stepping up to the plate. He has to be a member of ROCCAT that facilitates the carry, because up until now for ROCCAT, a lot of it has been in the hands of Hyanon and Woodid in that bottom lane, and if they fall behind, ROCCAT tend to struggle.
And the same can be said for when Betsy is not on the likes of a Vladimir. Looks very comfortable on a pick like that, but when you move him on to something a little bit earlier game, we saw a Lucian game come out, an Orianna game went well last week for him. You just have to kind of question, for a Syndra, is it going to have that later game impact that we know Betsy likes to have? And that's something we'll have to track here up against the Splyce boys.
Let's talk a little bit about compositions and what these teams are aiming to do here, Stress. When you look at ROCCAT's lineup, they've got a skirmishing jungler, they've got Faxi up in that top lane who, on the Gnar, can split, can join fights. What is the goal of this composition? What are they trying to do as we get into the later portion of the game?
So a lot of what they'll be looking to do, at least, is just utilize the strength of the Gnar over in the side lane and try and push back and win the 1 versus 1 once the map opens up. It will somewhat deny Wonder's ability to have impact outside of team fights, but you can see how well it's worked for ROCCAT. For Faxi, 7 wins, 3 losses on this Gnar, and generally the performances that he has looked comfortable on are on this champion. That's why it's such a high priority when they can pick it, when it makes sense for ROCCAT to take.
That's across the entire year, of course, including Spring Split. Only played it twice thus far in summer, 50% win rate on it. One of those games was against G2 though, so it's a little bit harder to judge.
But it was G2 with subs.
Yes,
it was the
I was
G2
trying to give him the benefit of the doubt here, Stress. I have to admit, Lulex, Sendo and Blank had a superb series in that first week of the LCS, so It's not putting anything past that G2 team. They were a strong roster even though they were playing with 3 subs.
A lot of names came out from that series that came from Challenger when you look at it, and of course Pride Stalker, a player that was in Challenger in the previous split, and I think that's where a lot of the difficulty for him comes on, is early game activity. Mid lane and bot lane though, we see junglers going in.
Pride Stalker's going to jump in onto Cobby, flash away the hook burns, and Mickey's already burned his flash. This is going to be first blood to ROCCAT.
ROCCAT having much better impact off their first blood here. You can see Betsy in the mid lane did utilize his flash as the Trashy tried to gank as well, but we were talking about how Pride Stalker on this Warwick may not be able to have the same impact as Trashy. Well, you pair that with Wadid's ability to set up the play in the bottom lane. Lantern comes through, looked like a flash flay came out, and ROCCAT taking full control of this bottom lane. Pride Stalker outside of vision, stalking his prey. Flash comes through, no flay yet for Wadid, but it was Pride Stalker flashing forward that actually landed that fear. Hook looked like he was going towards Cobby, threw the decoy towards Mickey, gets the first blood, and that's what we wanted to see. We asked the question, what can Pride Stalker do early? He's given us an answer already.
Now, his early game up until this week has not been amazing. That is exactly what we want to see from him. 10th in proximity to his teammates in the early game. 10th in kills and assists at 15 minutes. 4th in goal difference, but that's because he's just farming the entire time. Now he's had a bit more impact on his team. He's already got himself a Tiamat, and he's got ROCCAT an 800 gold lead.
Yeah, and this...
600 now. It's,
it's okay. The farming properties, it's a little bit of a fluid gold lead, but at the same time for ROCCAT, that is exactly what they need to continue doing at the same time, though, because this ROCCAT team, when you start pairing the hook with the stun from Betsy, they can really quickly take out any one member of Splyce, and then you have the numbers advantage before a team fight. Thing is, for ROCCAT, they do have a tendency at times to get a little bit sloppy. Betsy now with no flash, he needs to play around that. Keep that in mind, not get camped in the middle lane and lose a couple of kills while his flash isn't available. But they've done a good job so far. Trashy spotted out on the Callisto Wraith. We also saw Pride Stalker spotting him out on a ward in response to some of this vision we're seeing out from Splyce.
And this is Splyce realizing that ROCCAT want to focus bot lane because there's no flashes for Cobby or Mickey, so they place 3 wards in that bot side jungle and they can track Pride Stalker a lot easier.
Yeah, they can get the tracking for him down early on, but then you got to be careful once he's now past level 6. It's not the greatest range early, but you still can jump into the lane, get that Lantern through. If he comes through the lane, almost impossible to really track him before he arrives, or from the river, but this time they did have vision of when he came through from his own jungle.
But it also forces Cobby and Mickey to have to play so far back, and you can see a CS lead actually extending for Hyanan in this bottom lane. He's only about 11 up at the moment, but that will continue to pressure as Pride Stalker spends time around the bottom side.
One of the things that ROCCAT have utilized very well is getting their support out of the lane, bringing him up towards mid lane. Wadid actually has success, but not as much as Mickey. This is where we have to look at the difference in playstyles. Wadid, you can see most of his success does come from the laning phase. Mickey likes to go mid lane, sit with Senkux for a while, rank 3rd for the amount of time he spends up in that mid lane.
And we saw that last week as well. He was one of the ones that got Senkux ahead a lot of the time. Now, Faxi is going to get onto Trashy here. Betsy and Pride Stalker joining in. Here comes the equalizer, but it's not going to be enough. And Faxi's looking for Mega. They might continue to chase onto Wonder. Flashes up for both of them. Wonder needs to flash away. Does it preemptively and escapes, but ROCCAT get themselves another kill.
And this is all going in ROCCAT's favor here. We talked a little bit about getting this Pride Stalker Warwick going. He still didn't use his ultimate from that, and now Senkux, as he sat around on a ward, has to be careful for the same kind of response. One thing, as Trashy hasn't quite hit level 6, that is important to note. Anybody that hasn't played the reworked Rek'Sai, no longer is her ultimate that global dash over to one of the tunnels. It's now a little bit more like, funnily enough, the Warwick ult, where you jump towards a target, try and get on them, get some damage down, that type of thing. So don't expect Trashy to be playing out away from the team as much as you would have seen an old Rek'Sai do.
Now has hit level 6, will have that ultimate, can try and jump where Pride Stalker's jumping or jump onto that back line. The ability to get damage down on Hyanan is great with the equalizer, of course, and as you say, the Marshall Poise jumping in that worked ground is very difficult for him. ROCCAT do have this early lead, though, 1,300 gold ahead, and a lot of that sits on Pride Stalker's shoulders, with him getting these ganks off, performing so much better this week than we've seen him do in previous weeks, and he's actually got 1,400 gold just sitting in the bank at the moment. Kianan's sitting on 1,600 of his own, so he'll be wanting to spend that, because otherwise he's not using that 700 gold lead he has over Kobe.
Yeah, it will end up going that way after the recall. You'll end up finishing off that Blade of the Ruined King, or at least getting very close to it, and that's where you can start to maybe have a little bit more presence from that bottom lane. Other itemization to look at as a hook does land.
Into box, Wadid tries to get the play back, but doesn't connect. Now Mickey, not yet 6. Kianan will just bring Wadid away with the Fate's Call.
Yeah, always got that safety, but look, Trashy was around the bottom lane, looking to try and get towards that ultimate point. And now that we've seen Pridestalker go back and buy again, he's picked up the Skirmisher Saber, already had the Tiamat from earlier. His counterpart, Trashy, what a lot of people are doing on Rek'Sai is building warriors first into full tank. It gives you a little bit more skirmish power in the early game. Rek'Sai still has quite sharp claws to dig in. Some people do build full tank, but then you end up becoming almost just a crowd control bot, where you're looking for that knock-up, which isn't quite as good on Rek'Sai anymore. You only knock up the one target and knock back anybody else that you clip with it, so it's not quite as good as it used to be.
They have buffed the AD scaling off that in this patch. It's now double what it used to be, from 0.4 up to 0.8. Still not massive, especially when you're building sort of bruisery items on that Rek'Sai rather than full assassin. Would work a lot like Nocturne, I guess, if you had full assassin Rek'Sai. Pridestalker gonna go on the hunt for something, but unable to prowl his way around the river. Now, 10 minutes in, we have a 2,000 gold lead for ROCCAT. Those 2 kills sitting pretty in the bank for them, and they're starting to pick up bits and pieces of items. Pridestalker's going for the Skirmisher Saber here on the Warwick, and we've got a Hex Drinker first for Faxi as he trades onto Wonder in the top lane.
Yeah, and Faxi's build is based predominantly off just dominating out in that side lane and making sure you can get damage down. It's not a team fighting Gnar build where you might look towards Courage of the Colossus because you want to get that big Gnar and get a massive shield from it. Frozen Mallet after the Hex Drinker, you end up just whittling down your opponent, and that's where this all comes from. Expecting to see Wonder concede a lot of this lane the later we go, but for now Wonder is able to just farm it out with that Seeker's Arm Guard on and just make sure he can stay safe.
Has had to back behind his tier 2 now, as we see Faxi proxy farming up towards that top side. Many a Singed will be watching on in hope and anticipation that perhaps it becomes meta once again. Let's look across the board. Let's take a quick recap of how the key players are doing in this game. So we focused on Senkux in picks and bans. Hasn't really lost out too much. Did have to burn his flash there. Still ahead in CS over Betsy, about 15 farm or so ahead.
Yeah, and Betsy, of course, without that flash, had to concede some of the lane. Senkuk's able to transition back into the mid lane as soon as he's left to shop just that little bit faster. So to be expected, but nevertheless, that first blood does offset some of the gold difference between the two. But Splyce maintaining this bot side jungle control. Again, every time we look down there, wards heading towards Kianan and Wadid. And so far, it's Wadid that is getting the best of the support battle between the two with that first blood assist to his name.
I think the question now becomes for ROCCAT, though, how do they play from this position? They're not... Recently, they haven't really had such strong early games. They haven't really had Pridestalker facilitating this much. Right,
but they're just going to continue what they've done already. Pridestalker, I believe he has snuck down. He at least came to the lane early enough that if he waits around, Splyce will not assume he is there. It was so long ago that he's just waiting to try and get an ult, maybe the Lantern. Got to be careful he doesn't wait too long, though.
There's a ward here in the tri-bush.
Yeah, so it spotted him coming to the lane, and then he sat there for like 20 seconds. So Splyce may very well have moved up to the lane. They didn't in that case. Didn't get caught out.
And actually you can see Splyce reacting to it, saying, we know the jungler's on the bottom side, let's go top, let's clear out some vision, perhaps see if we can catch Faxi underneath his tower. We're unable to do it for the time being. And Kianan and Wadid have got a little bit of pressure on this turret down towards the bottom side, but Kallista's not the best at taking down these towers early on. Hook not quite going to connect from Wadid. Yeah,
just kind of a shot in the dark by Wadid, trying to just punish Kobe if he moves the wrong way under the tower. But you can see already the farm lead, the kill lead for Kianan is the right basis for ROCCAT. This is the kind of performance that we like to see from them. They having the early game is certainly something that we can't say has happened in a lot of ROCCAT games. So this one starts out in their favor, and hopefully we can see how they can look to transition this into a mid-game lead.
And one thing ROCCAT have done really well as well is play around how strong Kobbe and Mickey are as a bot lane duo. In pure 2v2s in that bottom lane, Kobbe and Mickey have the highest damage in trades of any bottom lane when it's only 2 people versus 2 people. So what Woodid and Hjarnan did was bring Pridestalker down, say, we'll put them on the back foot, and then they won't want to go aggressive on us. With the Zyra, who has so much early damage, with the Varus, who has so much early damage, they won't want to try and pressure forward to us, and we can have a pretty easy farm lane after that first blood.
But what ROCCAT have to be very careful of is as soon as Wonder gets involved in this game for Splyce, if they bring Trashy, bring Senkux, bring Wonder, Senkux will be able to get out of his lane a lot faster than Betsy will. And if they end up in a 5 versus 4, ROCCAT cannot really afford that. You can see some damage went on to Betsy in the middle lane from a small trade from Trashy and Senkux, but it wasn't an all-in there. Didn't see anything like the Weaver's Wall come out. So still a bit quiet for Splyce, waiting for their first opportunity to utilize this composition. And it is a slightly different composition to what we've seen them be successful on. This isn't the 1-3-1. It's now a little bit more reliant on team fighting and grouping up with Wonder coming into the fight early.
And it's interesting you decide to draft that sort of composition against ROCCAT, who last week against Fnatic showed us that their team fighting is pretty A-okay, pretty on par with some of the best teams in Europe. At 15 minutes, ROCCAT tend not to be in the lead, but this game is their 16th across the EU LCS in 2017, where they have a gold advantage. 2,000 as well, a substantial amount for the 15-minute mark, and they're slowly eking more and more out of this Splyce team.
And this is significant growth for ROCCAT over the last 6 months, realistically. This time last split, not even year, split, ROCCAT were without a win, heading into a series against an Origin team without a win that turned out to be a 70-minute game and was one of the most ridiculous, worst games we've ever had. Then the turnaround from that was a 6-series win streak, including beating the undefeated G2 lineup. And now last week, they beat Fnatic. They at least have a lead now against Splyce, who are challenging for the top of Group B. What a significant turnaround for this team. And a lot of it came from the introduction of like a sports psychologist they talked about. They've now adjusted players. They've got to try and be careful as the Splyce guys were heading down to the bottom lane, but even then, they hold their metal. They're able to just deny anything from happening.
No summoners burnt there as well. Faxi does still have TP if they want to come down. Wonder's going to get forced back by Pridestalker up towards the top side. Has to flash as Pridestalker jumps in. And coming back to your point, I especially think the sports psychologist has helped ROCCAT a huge amount, because a lot of people thought when Maxlaw left that they would actually fall down again, you know, lose once again. We're actually going to see the hook here. TP's coming in behind them. That tower's going to fall down. Fate's cool, knocks him back. There's the lantern. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. Great escape from ROCCAT. Fate's cool back, lantern away, tower for tower. Didn't quite see who got first blood in that trade.
Yeah, I actually wonder whether completing the TP was the correct choice from Wonder, as up top side, the continuing push from ROCCAT may very well take the inner tower from this. Wonder had an opportunity to stop his TP, and yeah, Warwick and Gnar are just going to be able to get this down. So it's a 2-tower equal trade, but you look at the amount of room this Gnar now will have on the top side of the map to punish Rumble. Going to be a tough couple of minutes here for Wonder before he can actually steady himself into that TP being available, the flash being available for the next fight.
It's such a long lane for them now. Splyce did actually get first tower blood there, which is why the gold evened out or didn't extend in favor of ROCCAT, but ROCCAT are going to look towards the Rift Herald as well. Should be an easy enough secure for them. Don't really see too much pressure coming out from Splyce.
Yeah, you can see Trashy heading over to his Wolves, not really assessing the fact that this is in progress. I'm a little surprised that Trashy didn't rush out towards that. Rek'Sai is one of the easier champions to get into the pit on. If there's no blast cone behind it, you just kind of burrow under, try and get the smite steal, and then if you have to, flash back out. But I mean, maybe that's nitpicking at that point, but I still think you should at least try and get a ward there, try and deny them, delay them. But the option for Splyce was get the Mountain Drake. That is obviously a benefit in its own right. Still think they could have contested ever so slightly.
I agree with you there, Stress. I think there's always a possibility of that. And you say it's a little bit nitpicky, but the way that both of these teams have played, and ROCCAT especially, has been so clean in this early game. There haven't really been any glaring errors where I say, well, they made a mistake there, their macro wasn't good there, they didn't trade effectively there. And this is the sort of game we would expect from playoff contenders, from second, first in the group teams. Splyce, of course, looking for that first spot, albeit temporarily today.
Yeah.
And ROCCAT challenging to go ahead of G2. Something a lot of people would have thought unthinkable.
Yeah, right now they are tied with G2 in series. So it's...
Gonna go in onto Senkus in the top side, Wadded with the playback, tanking up the tower. Here comes the TP. Senkus knock back, seismic shove on Jarnan as Trashy gets the damage down onto Wadid. Just about survives, but here comes the Void Rush. Trashy with a kill. Jarnan dies off towards the back of it as well. It's only Faxi up against 3 members of Splyce, and he's gonna get knocked up. Unburrow gets the kill. Double kill for Trashy. Splyce get 3.
Good flash knock up there from Trashy. Mid lane, the response is the Rift Herald was summoned. Now they go on to
Benson
Wonder.
has unleashed power. That's wonderful for ROCCAT as they take down the Rumble. They'll look for the tower as well. Let's pause. It's all right, guys. All the action's finished.
For now, at least, pause coming out from the Splyce side of things as the Rift Herald had pushed up towards the second tower. There was a lot to digest in that last 30 seconds of the game. Overall, ROCCAT extend their gold lead ever so slightly. The kills did go over to Splyce, most of them going to Trashy. Just a really intriguing set of plays.
So it ended up being a 3-for-2 trade in favor of Splyce in kills, but mid lane tower went to ROCCAT, and they're looking for a second tower as well. So there's a possibility that ROCCAT actually get the favorable end of the trade. And I want to come back to that as well, because we just talked about how ROCCAT are playing so cleanly. And even here, this was relatively clean for a bit of a botched dive down towards bottom lane.
Yeah, it starts out well for ROCCAT in the sense that they get onto Senkux. Senkux is not expecting this amount of damage from Hyunna, but you can see Wadid actually misses a lot in this exchange. It's only
Just
the
too tanky stress.
The Flay finally catches Senkux out before the rest of the fight. Then in comes the Rek'Sai ultimate to take out Wadid. Kobe is able to pick up one in response. And then we had the flash play come forward. So that was the bottom lane exchange that Splyce were able to turn around. And that's what that composition can do. Between the teleport and the Senkux ultimate, when they do get to use it, they can actually get on top of people quite quickly to turn around situations into their numbers.
I want to talk about the groups as well here, Stress, for a little bit as we still have this pause going on, because up until we came into group play, it looked very much like the groups were even. You know, you had standout members, Unicorns and H2K, Fnatic and G2. But after seeing Fnatic demolish H2K yesterday, and now seeing Splyce on the losing side to ROCCAT thus far in this game, can you say that Group A is actually more stacked or stronger than Group B?
Oh, that's always a loaded question.
Yes, it is.
It feels like it currently. Is, I think, what you can say on that. I don't think it's definitely the case, because there's so many questions I have for G2. Like, everybody just takes G2 and they're like, okay, these are the best guys in Europe, this is the best team, everybody else is, you know, supposedly a step down, but that's not the case right now. So you got to look at, like, the ROCCATs, the G2s of the world. Maybe they are closer to where the top of Group A is, but what about Unicorns Fnatic? That's a matchup I want to see. What about Unicorns G2? Is
Unicorns
that closer?
G2 is a match I want to see, and that's coming up straight after this series as well. But we still have at least 2 games of action, or 1.5 games at least, Stress.
Yeah.
And these teams look very, very close. I think if you take away the early kills in the bottom lane from ROCCAT, that first blood, this game would be very much more on a knife edge and not erring towards ROCCAT's favor. We do have some information about the pause. Wonder pause because of an issue with the damage from Rumble's equalizer. The league officials are reviewing the play, and we'll get you more information as soon as we can. I know the officials work very hard on making sure that all aspects of the play are covered when this sort of thing goes up. Yeah,
we, of course, as you said, we're waiting for league officials' review of the play. There was a significant amount of damage, but we'll see how that all pans out. As honestly, we talked a little bit about that play from Splyce in the bottom lane, turning it back around against ROCCAT. I feel like some of that play could have been neutralized, the Rift Herald having this potency in the middle lane. We talked about maybe contesting it a little and pushing away Pridestalker from that area. It feels like Splyce are playing a very reactive game here up against ROCCAT, rather than being proactive on their own exchange. And that's something I think they're going to have to adjust here. It works well when you have scaling side laners, but right now the Rumble only going to have impact in team fights. The Taliyah, most of the impact is going to come when you cross over to the rest of the team. So I kind of want to see them start forcing plays, utilizing some of these ultimates.
It feels more like the Splyce of a few weeks ago who had these 1-3-1 compositions, who had the split push possibility, rather than Splyce with a team that really wants to team fight. There were times, Stress, when they tried to make plays up towards that top side. We saw Faxi have to back away as it was Trashy and Senkooks who went up there looking for the ult to cut Faxi off by the tower, but they've never really been able to pull that trigger, and it felt time and time again like ROCCAT are just half a step or a step ahead of them across the course of this game. Yeah,
it certainly feels like it, and a lot of that came from their young jungler, Pride Stalker. Actually, the impact he had was way more than we've seen in the previous weeks.
Exactly, and Pride Stalker in Challenger Series took a while to wake up as well. It probably took him about 4 weeks to wake up, and we are now into week 4 of the LCS as well. League officials are still investigating the issue reported by Wonder. In the meantime, let's send it to Shocks for a look at the early game.
Thank you very much indeed. Wonder pausing because of an issue with the damage from Rumble's equalizer is what he reported to league officials, and they are right now investigating and reviewing the play. So we're going to review a bit of the game as well. And Henning, they were talking about Group A being stronger or weaker, and you just think, well, hey, Group A is clearly stronger.
I mean, before yesterday, I think you could make the argument for either side. And now Fnatic just 2 OH to K like it's no thing, and now I think you've got to go with Group A.
And especially now that ROCCAT is putting up such a good performance in this game so far, and very interesting to me. Obviously, Pride Stalker, we had so many question marks for him, and I can't help but wonder that the fact that he stole away some of the buffs which netted ROCCAT a lot of advantages in the games they ended up winning might have been kind of a mental de-blockage for him, because in this game, he seemed to have all the reins of the Rift.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the issue that people have been having with Pride Stalker has been the mechanics of the game knowledge, just like the confidence to go for the place. And right now he's like ganking bottom lane level 4 as Warwick just fear flash right into the back line together with the good setup from Wadid. So I think that Pride Stalker is definitely playing well this game. I think Warwick is a pick that fits him.
Yeah, if we take a look at the picks and men's in just a second, I was very interested to see the new Rek'Sai, and Rek'Sai has always been a favorite of Trash together with Graga's champion that can be quite tanky, can go into the middle of the team and engage. But when it comes to the early game, do you think the changes made in 7.11 and then 7.12 would be a reason why he got put behind a bit in pressure by Warwick, or is that champion inherent, or what was going on there?
I think the thing about Rek'Sai right now is that she's not necessarily...
Queen of Desert.
You got to keep track of that. But she's not necessarily weaker than before. I think that she can put up at least as good of a jungle clear and early game skirmishes. So I don't think that the rework of the champion is a reason that Trashy has not been able to keep up early game with Pride Stalker. I think it's just Pride Stalker communicating better with his lanes, and I think there's better gank setup for Pride Stalker compared to Trashy.
Yeah, it must have been much more proactive than he has been. Something that you were speaking about as well when Kennen was left open and we looked at the picks for Wonder.
Yeah.
You really thought he was going to go for that. Why in the end do you think he didn't and opted for the other pick?
I think that's Splyce's style. They really like to have Wonder on a winning matchup in the top lane, because then you can have Senkooks on these supportive mid laners like the Talia, like the Aurelion Sol that can roam to the side lanes and help him out, and just have Wonder winning the side lane and then keeping up with the split push. This game, though, they did not go for the Kennen when it was available to them. They went for the Rumble instead and got sort of soft counter-picked by a Gnar, which means that in the extended trades in a long lane in a 1v1, Gnar is going to be able to out-pressure the Rumble. So even though Wonder will be able to contribute more to a team fight, in the extended 1v1, Faxi is going to have the pressure, and I think that's not really going with the style that Splyce have been playing with before.
Yeah, that has worked for them in the past. So you think here they're banking more on the team fight and maybe, you know, the new ultimate by Rek'Sai going in there, focusing up one target, getting the Rumble ultimate to zone off the rest. Might that be the plan?
Yeah, I mean, last week they were able to out-team fight the Unicorns of Love, which is saying a lot.
Yeah.
So I think that they might have adapted their style from last week and go from these more sort of a team fight-focused comp. This is like a team fight comp with a strong early game, and I think that's something that could fit Splyce after what we saw from them last week. Right now, not doing too well in the early game, though, and that's where they should be somewhat strong in the early game, and it's not working out for them.
Yeah, I do have an update, so I have to interrupt you for just a second. League officials, they have determined that there was indeed an issue where Rumble's equalizer did not do damage to caster minions, and officials are now meeting with the teams to discuss further action to take. So we will be updating you as we go on, as we were speaking about Splyce, their team composition and the plan in this game, because we haven't been seeing much of a plan, sadly, and I don't think that's too much to the detriment of Splyce, because ROCCAT has just been playing extremely well, and not just in making early moves, but also capitalizing on it and taking objectives, which is a huge leap for them.
Yeah, I mean, taking these towers are very important, especially when you get the split pusher in the Gnar versus the Rumble. So having the Gnar like in just a normal 1-versus-1 lane with the Rumble, you're not going to really be able to punish him. But if you have the extended lanes, if the towers are down, especially if you got like a frozen mallet on the Gnar, you can just chase down that Rumble, and there's nothing that Wonder can do against that Afaxi. So I think that trading the towers in the side lanes here is beneficial for ROCCAT. We've also got to see that on the map right now. As the pass is coming in, the mid lane tower tier 2 is actually getting sieged down for ROCCAT. So if ROCCAT would be able to get both tier 2s on the top side of the map, that would just give them such an immense control over the top side jungle.
Yeah, I do believe we have a replay of that we can pull up where there was a skirmish in the bottom lane, and in the end, both teams are able to capitalize and focus more on the map and get some towers off it.
So Shax, tell me, what does Kalista and Thresh do? This duo,
they hook and they shoot people.
They are so good at saving each other. Look at this. They're able to like get from tier 1 to tier 2 tower in like 1 second because you got the Fate's Call and the Lantern. If you're Splyce, you should know this. You should know that they will be so good at just getting away from the gank, and Rumble TP completes towards the bottom lane. I'm not sure if that's the correct choice. They are able to trade tier 1 bot and tier 1 mid for 2 towers top, but as we see after this, ROCCAT also are able to pick up the Rift Herald, which allow them to break open mid lane. So in the end, I'd say this is a beneficial trade for ROCCAT, and I think that after this, they have about a 1.5k gold advantage against the team comp from Splyce that should be decently strong in the early game.
Right, they also take the Rift Herald, because in the end that would have been advantageous for both teams, or kind of even, but they take the Rift Herald, so they have a card in their back pocket for later if they get a bit of pressure in each of the lanes. Where do you think they'll want to put that pressure, or where do they want to put the push the advantage out? Is mid lane now the priority for them?
Yeah, for sure. I think we actually saw them use Rift Herald in the mid lane before before the pause went down. I definitely think that's the right choice. I mean, if you can choose any lane to bust open, it's going to be the mid lane for the jungle control, and especially when you already got 2 towers on the top side. I mean, when it comes to the Baron setups later in the game, ROCCAT can just go into the enemy jungle and find the picks, and there's not going to be any towers for Splyce to run away to. Yeah,
I think that's crucial here, because they do have Foxy, and maybe it's also a bit of Foxy did not have the hottest games maybe recently, and Gnar is kind of his favorite pick, or one that he has been doing really, really well historically, and it fits now, and especially now that the top half of the map is entirely open for ROCCAT, they'll be able to utilize that to their advantage. And what can Splyce come up now with a plan? They have the team fighting comp. Where can they push an advantage? Because it's not so easy when you're being pushed back, and maybe in Vision also to just pull the trigger anywhere.
You do not I think my problem with the team come from Splyce is that you don't really have the clear engage tools. When you have the team fighting comp, you really want a way to open up the fight, and I don't really see that here. Sure, you can maybe get the Rek'Sai flank in with a tunnel, or you can have like a Rumble ulti or a Varus ulti to catch someone from range, but they don't have the way of forcing a team fight. If they're able to get a team fight, though, for example, if ROCCAT takes an objective and they're able to come and interrupt them, if ROCCAT comes at them and tries to engage, they have so many great tools to do this. They have the Chain of Corruption, they have the Strangled Thorns, they have the Equalizer, they have everything to just lay down the AoE damage and punish ROCCAT.
Nice to see that the crowd is also still enjoying. They're all dressed up as well. And Grabs is like, oh my god, I'm finally winning another game. Can we play? I don't know if you can hear it. Hi, guys. All right. Well, I also hope that we can get into game in just a bit as well. And looking forward, maybe something we haven't touched on is a mid lane. Betsy, we've said, well, he's good on these control mages and that he doesn't really have to do the all-in all too much. And Syndra is a champion that he is going to have to make the plays later. And Sankux, on the other hand, was also someone that we were looking at that had been having a big champion pool. He pulled out the Aurelion Soul. He's been having a bit more influence. How do you think the influence of both Talia in this game and then on the other side of Betsy on Syndra is going to evolve?
I was a bit surprised to see these picks in towards the mid lane, because these are 2 mid laners that have very peculiar champion pools. Like, they really have their own style. Betsy's most played champion is the Vladimir. The most played champion for Senkux is the Aurelion Sol.
Yeah.
So both of them really have this like kind of weird way of playing the game, and now they're going towards Syndra and Talia, 2 of the like standard go-to mid laners. Mid lane so far actually it looks like Senkux did have the pressure on towards Betsy, and that Talia versus Syndra matchup was able to get a lot of tower damage, which ended up being very valuable when Splyce was able to come mid and get the tower.
Right. Well, we've been talking for a bit. I'm going to reiterate that League officials are still investigating the possible bug reported by Wonder about Rumble damage not being done on the minions, and they are now deliberating what the next steps are in this process specifically. And, well, I kind of feel like we've exhausted the theorizing over the game specifically, so let's go a bit beside the game and maybe look at a bigger scale things. Because Splyce is a team that we'd expected, or for them to go back to the higher regions. Martin's always saying, or Martin Linge, the official, is always saying, this is summer split Splyce, so this is where it's going to come all online for them. But it does seem that ROCCAT seems to have the upper hand in the slower macro game, which is surprising to me.
It is a bit surprising to me. I mean, the strong laners that Splyce was able to draft, I think that's just a testament to that they fear falling behind in lane, so they really want the strong laners so they don't fall behind, and then they're confident in their team fighting capabilities. But as you said, right now, ROCCAT seems to be getting more towers, getting more objectives, and I think this is due to Trashy not being able to keep up with Pridestalker, and Pridestalker getting that early advantage in the bottom side. I think he's just going to be able to keep punishing Trashy unless the Danish jungler is able with the Lucky glasses, was it?
Yeah, he tweeted that he was undefeated on the glasses he's wearing right now. So anything you can get to help. Well, we'll see how it evolves in this game. And in the context of the group for Splyce, obviously, they definitely want to win this game. They showed that they can beat the Unicorns of Love, so it would only be odd if they took another step down now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they're contesting for that top spot with the likes of Unicorns of Love and H2K. And with H2K losing yesterday in like a pretty convincing fashion, like it's definitely like the initiative could be there for Splyce to take that first spot in the group, and especially since the Unicorns have a tough matchup later on today as well, going up against U2. A lot of it's going to be up to the Splyce to. I mean, they could run away with the group at this point.
All right. Well, I think it's time for us to move on. Luckily so, to catch you guys up, League officials have investigated a bug with Rumble's equalizer, but have determined that the issue does not warrant a remake, and the teams will be playing through. So let's send it back to Medic and Stress to get back on the Rift.
Thank you very much, Shocks, and welcome back to the Summoner's Rift. Stress is here. Just hiding behind me for the time being.
And we're getting ready to head back into the game. Okay,
there we are.
So at this point, we need to reset some of the game for you. Just, you know, remember where we are here. So we just had the play on the bottom side coming this Splyce turn around. And we're currently in a situation where Wonder was trying to hold mid against the Rift Herald push. Had a Warwick jump right onto him. And ROCCAT looked to try and get further on in that mid lane push. That's where we ended up going. And we are back into the game. You can see Rift Herald just about to expire in that middle lane. Didn't achieve the second tower.
Still did get one, of course, so it's still an equal trade. 3 kills to Splyce, 2 kills to ROCCAT. ROCCAT get that tower in the mid lane and a bit of a chunk off the next tower as well. A 2,000 gold lead for them, 20 minutes in. And they're starting to pick up items across the board. You see double items completed onto Hyanan, Morello Nomicon, and almost that Neandries as well for Betsy. Yeah, and of course, ROCCAT have been ahead for the majority of this game. If you are just joining us, it comes from a set of early plays that ROCCAT made in the bottom lane, getting Pridestalker into the lane, utilizing the Thresh Lantern gank on this Warwick, and they managed to put Trashy behind as well for the majority of the early game. But right now, ROCCAT looking to continue some of their aggressive play. Bottom tower is finally going to go down to the hands of Hyanan, and Wadid has been very mobile on the Rift, getting between the lanes, making sure he has impact. And that's something Wadid has just done so well throughout the split. His Thresh as well, one of his most common picks throughout this summer split, has been absolutely devastating. His hooks, reminiscent of Jez's yesterday with all of those flash hooks he landed for Fnatic. Kobe's actually gone for second item QSS as well. Pridestalker's going to get caught out by Trashy. Kobe's here as well, no chains to come down yet, but Senkux will get a tower for Splyce. That means it's 4-3 on the tower score and 4-3 on the scoreline. Yeah, very quick demolition game here out from ROCCAT and Splyce. And of course, Mountain Drake, first of all, did go over to Splyce early on. The Rift Herald went to ROCCAT. Ooh, just a split-second difference there as Senkux was recalling out of the top side before Hyanan and Wadid actually put a ward in that bush. Managed to just get out in time, but you have to feel like this favors ROCCAT. A composition that can very easily take one member of Splyce out. With this Syndra, with this Thresh, the Warwick is going to be very difficult to deal with the longer we go. However, Splyce can try and find ways to deal with it. Banshees was the first item for Senkux, the QSS, as we said, for Kobe. Mickey can always get a McHale's, although that's slightly out of build for the Zyma. Can dodge, can flash away if you want to. And if ROCCAT go for that aggressive play, try and pick someone out and aren't able to connect onto anyone, then perhaps we'll see Splyce be able to turn it around. They've got great zone control with their composition. And this is where one of the dangerous areas come from, is the fact that ROCCAT are pushing forward with wards behind them.
Senkux is trying to come down
Here we
towards the
go.
middle lane. Yeah, here comes the Weaver's Wall. Where's
Weaver's
the
Wall.
teleport?
Yarnan gets knocked back and he has no way to escape. The hook onto Trashy into the box. His Pride Stalker as well, though. Yarnan is going to get knocked up. It's a 1-for-1 trade as ROCCAT retreat. The equalizer comes out. Splits were did off from the rest of the team, but Senkux is unable to chase any further. Meanwhile, in the top lane, Faxi continues to push.
Yeah, once again, Faxi having the impact outside of the team fight here. Didn't choose to teleport down, but
I
is
like our
able
camera
to
in
push.
camera here, by the way. Can see Faxi here. That was Mega Gnar on the big screen and Mini Gnar on the small screen.
Just able
Did you get it
to,
stressed?
yeah.
Did you get it stressed?
It's two Ronnies joke at this point with you and I. Although if you're the big Ronnie, that means I'm the funny one. So I don't think that's completely true.
No, I'll take
a lot
that.
of people,
Your pun game has been on point.
A lot of people not from the UK really confused about that, but just...
Well, my real name's Airman as well, so it's a Ron.
Ah.
A Ronnie. Yeah. Anyway, ROCCAT now 5 kills to 4 up still, only with that 3,000 gold lead. Have some vision control in the river, but if you look at Splyce's vision as well, they've got good control wards on their red side, and they are spotting out any aggressive plays from ROCCAT.
Yeah, and ROCCAT have been more of the active team. We talked about this a little bit before we headed to the analyst desk, where it seems like Splyce are trying to be reactive, and this was the first play utilizing the Taliyah ultimate that we've really seen this game, and that's what Splyce were doing very well against the Unicorns, is making the plays, taking the team fights to them. And that was why that win over the Unicorns was quite surprising, because usually nobody beats the Unicorns at team fighting and skirmishing.
Exactly.
Everybody just falls to them, and Splyce said, nope, we're going to win this game, and 2-1 on the series. Really impressive.
Unicorns obviously just didn't have the right anti-venom for the day. Splyce spitting that poison towards the cats that are ROCCAT, but ROCCAT at the moment seem to be immune. They're setting up vision around this Baron. Radid can clear out that ward if he wants. Don't need to. It's a control ward there anyway, so it's no vision granted for the Splyce lineup. ROCCAT are going to go down towards this Mountain Drake. Of course, Splyce picked one up for themselves earlier on, and because the map is so open now, it actually can make it harder for ROCCAT to find a pick, because Splyce have a lot more opportunity to roam around without having to stand near their towers.
Talk about having the right anti-venom and that. I thought Harry Potter taught us that, like, unicorn blood gave, like, life properties, and you should be stronger from it.
You have to drink it,
I mean,
though.
oh, okay, I guess Splyce didn't figure that bit out last week.
that was the problem. And
That's
also,
why
none of them look like Voldemort.
That's true. They've got to a point where they're not taking the lead in the game. They clearly didn't listen to Professor Quirrell in Philosopher's Stone, but something you've got to listen to in this is at least the way ROCCAT move towards that Baron. With the Callista, with the Gnar, you'll be able to take that down quite quickly. So if ROCCAT do end up going over there, taking control of the Baron pit, then Splyce will be in a little bit of trouble. That's why they're putting so much focus around it right now with those wards.
Actually, something we've seen so well from both these teams this game is trading of objectives. So there we saw ROCCAT go for the Mountain, and Splyce said, okay, we'll get vision around the Baron. We'll make sure you can't sneak that one away from us later on. Even with Faxi continuing to push up towards that bottom side, Splyce have been able to react a lot of the time, and it would have been very easy for them just to fall behind here and lose out because of ROCCAT's strong early game, but they've kept it within this 3,000 gold marker, and it means that they always have a chance in the game. Trashy's going to jump in, Bessie gets knocked back, rooted down, that's a shutdown for Splyce.
Couldn't even trade for Mickey's life, but here comes Wadid and Yarnan.
This is brave. This is so brave from Wadid and Yarnan. Fate's call comes out, knock up onto Trashy. Here come the rest of ROCCAT. They're trying to catch Splyce between ROCCAT and a hard place, but Trashy does so much work in the front line. That's a kill for him. Faxi, the last man standing for ROCCAT, as Splyce absolutely destroy ROCCAT.
2 fractured fights in Splyce's favor. Good flash from Senkux.
Faxi's still going in, though, does get the stun. The barrier comes out, Seismic Shove comes back, but Faxi's not knocked away, and Senkux is going to fall. Faxi bringing some hope back for ROCCAT.
Yeah, Senkux is sticking around a little bit too long. That will be a detriment. No side lane Baron buff for now, at least in one of the lanes here. Wonder will have teleport available, so he can go out towards the side lane. Faxi can match it and try and play the 1 versus 1 now that he's got the Frozen Mallet. But this fight all started with that catch onto Betsy. Flash knockup didn't quite land as Betsy flashed it out initially, but Trashy was able to at least get the knock back by the looks of things and was able to at least continue that fight. Then Senkux cuts off Yarnan and Wadid from the long escape from this, and Trashy just takes up a lot of the ROCCAT time here. Good Zyra ultimate. Again, zoning back ROCCAT, splitting the fight in half, and from there, Faxi, he's built for side lane split pushing, but that doesn't mean he won't deal with a pesky Taliyah. His flash came out already. Senkuk still wanted to fight. I think that's the problem, is once you've already got away from this situation, just let the Mega Gnar go. You're going to lose that fight. Oh, Senkuk's no flash.
Senkuk's going to get jumped on, no flash. As you say, here they come, all of ROCCAT. Just appear from thin air, and Senkuk's is dead once again.
That's a great response, and I'd love to have seen the setup on that a little bit more out of ROCCAT. See how they got into that position without Splyce actually figuring them out, because, of course, Splyce should have had those empowered recalls.
Faxi does have another flash away from Mickey. This is so good from Faxi.
And this is why it's one of his picks. I mean, it doesn't look all that flashy, but Faxi comes in, just walks up to someone, gets a flash twice in a row now. That has translated into kills and tower kills, because look, bottom lane, very low. Mid lane, low from the Rift Herald push earlier. Means ROCCAT have a lot of gold just waiting to go in their favor.
And Splyce have the Baron here.
Yeah.
Splyce are the team that won the last fight, and they are the ones on the back foot. As ROCCAT make a great pick down towards that bottom lane. As you say, superb setup by them to do that. The gold basically even between these two teams now, and this is such a close fray between these two guys.
So this was the setup. Thank you very much to our observers for getting this in our view. The lane was pushed up far enough that Senkuk didn't see anybody come up. Faxi jumps the lane first. Senkuk thinks he's just about safe, and it's an easy pickup for ROCCAT to get that first kill in that bottom lane since the Baron buff was picked up.
Yanan and Wadid standing still outside of the bush, because obviously Trashy can't see them anyway, so it doesn't matter if you're in the bush or outside of the bush. Just looks really odd when you see it. Faxi's going to jump in onto Mickey. Here's the base call as well. They know there's no flash for the Zyber, but the equalizer is going to come down, and that's going to burn straight through with it. ROCCAT lose one. Splyce have one taken down as well as Trashy gets onto the back line, but Yanan's doing work. Cobby chasing up against Betsy. Betsy wins that one. Senkuk's the last man standing once again for Splyce.
And it's 1 versus 4 remaining in favor of ROCCAT here. They've already got themselves a team fight win. Now they move towards the mid lane, and up against the Baron buff. ROCCAT have completely neutralized Splyce's pushing power because of the lead that accrued earlier on.
Look at how well ROCCAT have played this anti-Baron buff. They're going to get an inhibitor tower out of it, actually extend the gold lead. They'll get the inhibitor as well, and Splyce, after coming back into the game and looking like they were on the front foot, have been absolutely rocked by ROCCAT.
And Pride Stalker, he's on for a personal best. Previously, he'd accrued
50 damage a minute.
He'd accrued total 3,500 damage on Warwick across all of his games. Because of fights like this, he's broken it in one game alone on his Warwick. And you can see ROCCAT just in full control. Cobby taken down on the side. Betsy had an easy route into that fight. And ROCCAT have broken the Baron buff of Splyce and pushed them all the way back to having a gold lead again.
3,000 ahead for ROCCAT now, and I think the story of Pride Stalker in this game and in this series thus far is one of the key turning points for ROCCAT. He has had such an impact in this game. He has been devastating from basically minute 3, and Splyce just haven't been able to deal with him. Trashy, you know, has had some good plays, but Pride Stalker has always seemed to be that one step ahead, that one move ahead of this Splyce lineup.
And the interesting thing is, while there was the Zac ban, the Elise ban, the Kha'Zix ban, we saw Trashy have good performances on Lee Sin. We questioned whether he could play the Lee Sin a couple of weeks back, and he actually showed up, looked very strong, opting for this Rek'Sai. And Rek'Sai is by no means a bad pick, but it just doesn't have the same impact, especially from behind. It is so difficult, because Rek'Sai is a 50-50 champion, and you're dead.
Not really 50-50, there's no smite on the enemy team. Wadid's going to land the hook onto Mickey. Yanan has to use the QSS. They get the Dragon, it's an Infernal. Splyce going to retreat.
And what I mean by 50-50 is Rek'Sai is neither a carry nor a tank.
But Pride Stalker's carrying this ROCCAT lineup now. Cobby's going to try and trade back onto him, but just does not have enough damage. And actually, ROCCAT just looking for the push down mid here. Is this a little bit too brave? There are still 3 members of Splyce left alive. Senkuk has to flash the hook. They're looking for the Nexus Towers, but here comes Cobby, and here comes Wonder. What can they do to wall in ROCCAT?
The thing is, Pride Stalker's around now as well. ROCCAT have their whole team strong. ROCCAT are going to back themselves away, and you can see just how easily Trashy got taken down. You're not tanky until you've got 3-4 items on Rek'Sai. It's not like you get this massive boost of health early on, and it just means you can get bursted down after going this warrior build. This is where ROCCAT go for it. Trashy must have died incredibly quickly, barely 2,000 health to his name here, and down he goes. That's a lot of damage first, and then ROCCAT were indeed able to get the hook over the wall. The only thing that maybe makes this fight less so in ROCCAT's favor early on is the fact that Hyanan got chunked early on, and they weren't able to continue into the same way. Hyanan was moving towards the mid lane, and ROCCAT decided to splinter off.
They do get another kill.
Yeah, they do, and I mean, it goes their favor. Like, you can't argue that.
I think the call to go for the Nexus probably was a little bit greedy from them, with 3 members of Splyce still alive and the 3 damage dealers still alive as well. The wave clear from Varus, from Talia is just a little bit too strong. Faxi's gone back to his split push though, has the teleport if he wants to join this fight around the Baron in about 40 seconds time. Splyce setting up there, look at that gold swing, just for a minute or two, Splyce were back in the lead, but ROCCAT have just slowly worked their way up this mountain, and the mountain seems to be reaching its peak.
That is astonishing that ROCCAT have been in control for so long of this game, but it has been quite collected for the most part. Just those couple of fights that went in Splyce's favor earlier, managing to get the Baron for themselves. Well, the next Baron's up in 10 seconds. And Faxi is already pushing back Wonder on the bottom side. This is the side lane control we were expecting. 2 levels up. Faxi is level capped right now. No more experience to go in his favor, and that means he's just crushing through Wonder right now.
That he is, and come back to how clean and how methodical this has been from ROCCAT. Even when they went behind, they didn't look anxious. They didn't look like they were going to make mistakes. And I think a lot of that comes down to the sports psychologist that they picked up at the end of last split. Mental strength from them has been incredible throughout this first game. And when they beat Fnatic, it was the same. They fell quite far behind in that second game with Faxi totaling a lot of deaths.
And that was something that ROCCAT themselves talked about, talking about how it helped them settle as a team. Of course, the changes with Maxwell coming out, we don't know, or at least going to the Misfits lineup, don't really know how that impacted the team behind the scenes, but it looks like they're playing some of the best we've seen all year, at least here up against Splyce.
And Betsy was saying when Price Stalker came on, he said, I think he's mechanically better than Max Law. He just doesn't quite have that shot calling yet. And it seems like in this game they found, I don't know if it's Price Stalker, but they found a shot caller, found someone who can make them make those plays in the early game, make Pride Stalker be that little bit more aggressive, be that bit more on the front foot. And now actually Trashy is caught out behind Faxi here, the Narm into the wall, the suppression. Trashy just locked up for days, will try and jump away, but he jumps straight back into the ROCCAT team. What did his logo is going to be a 1-for-1 trade as ROCCAT do just have to back away. Can't take anything more against Splyce for the time being. Yeah,
ROCCAT used a couple of their big ultimates there with the box. Hyanan's ultimate as well, Faxi's ultimate. They can't really look for round 2 on this fight. That means Splyce get a moment here to at least secure some vision control around the Baron, because ROCCAT did just all recall away. And this Trashy going around underground vision, not exactly the easiest.
Trashy was free to get caught out by the ROCCAT lineup.
I don't really know whether the Wombles made
Womble
it
song,
to Denmark.
Possibly not. The Ronnies probably didn't make it either,
No,
but we're
probably
going with as many English references as we can today. British references, sorry. Gonna go for the Baron once again.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll just chunk that one down. I've had Vedius on.
I've had enough of my co-casters make fun of the Welsh for enough of a split.
Right, at the moment, ROCCAT are going to secure the Baron. No contest from Splyce as Trashy was all the way back in base. And now ROCCAT with a Baron buff. Will it be their undoing like it was Splyce's earlier?
You have to figure that with this Gnar built for the side lane, able to just continue to push, ROCCAT having the strength they already have from their gold lead when it comes to fighting power, plus they got an Infernal Drake on top of that, they should be able to kind of walk this one in, almost. Although, we've talked about damage, that's quite a lot of damage just in itself coming from Mickey.
Typical Zyra support player there.
Yeah, well, you know,
most damage in the game.
We were looking at supports to build Locket, and maybe a Redemption. Knight's Vow. No, Mickey still got Leandries and Sork Boots, because he's Zyra, so why not?
Yeah, why not?
I mean, that makes sense.
Also, you're not focused in a lot of fights. Actually, Faxi's being focused up towards the top side, and ROCCAT are unable to react to this. Faxi will burn down as Wonder gets the flame spitter out, but he manages to jump across the minions and across the wall. Here comes Price Stalker. Wonder has the flash. ROCCAT with 3 members in the mid will look towards the inhibitor. TP in from Faxi as well towards topside.
Faxi just absorbed both carries from Splyce for a while, just enough that they could get the mid inhibitor and now the top inhibitor tower as well. Baron buff still remains for 2 minutes longer. And with the Elder Drake coming up, it should be easy for Yanan and Wadid to take this, even with the Rift Scuttler vision there. This is a Rend Callista, remember? So there's no real way of Smite stealing through.
Splyce are making a beeline for it, though. They're going to see if they can contest, but already 3,000 HP on that Baron. It's going to be a pretty easy Rend for Yanan, and there it goes.
The opportunity there, though, is if they wanted to fight. Faxi, of course, didn't have teleport available, but he was out of vision in the top side jungle. So it means Splyce didn't have full information that that was, in fact, a fight they could take. But recalls all come through. 1 minute 30 on the Baron buff left. Means that Splyce still have a lot of work to do to defend here.
Have a huge amount of work to do. Elder Drake with an Infernal and a Mountain. Baron buff as you stay with still a minute and a half. And a 7,000 gold lead for ROCCAT. Look at these items. Betsy has a Rabadon's Death Cap completed. You've got completed item build basically on Faxi in the top lane. AD carry only half an item away.
Yep.
ROCCAT are sitting very, very comfortably in this game.
Banner of command for Wadid as well.
Oh, baby.
Just making sure he's got the full push here.
No longer gives AP, of course, on 7-12, so makes a lot more sense on a Thresh than it used to.
Yeah, and still has the viability of everything you're looking at when you look at Rumble wave clear, Talia wave clear. You deny a lot of that still. It's didn't really change, but Splyce want to engage. They cut off two.
Two members on the wrong side. There comes the equalizer. Price is going to hit Death. Lanterns away, and now they come to fight. Trash is just dead. Again, like he just disappears in the middle of the fight. Tries to use the board. Just a hook onto Wonder. He gets pulled back. He's going to try and turn this one around as Mickey puts the damage down onto Pride Stalker. Wonder's dead. ROCCAT still have 5 members left alive. Make that 4. As one gets shoved back. Faxi looking for the Nexus towers as the rest of ROCCAT will push down in the bottom lane. That will be the first Nexus tower falling just about. How does that go to Wadid? it's the banner of company. Bob doing work there for ROCCAT. They're looking for the Nexus. They want to go 1-0 up. Senkux knocks back. Cobby flashes in. Is it too little too late? I think it is. ROCCAT clean up the fight. They get all 5 members of Splyce. And they will get the Nexus as well. 1-0 to ROCCAT.
And they did it, winning a 4 versus 5 in the bottom lane as Faxi with the Gnar took the taxi all the way to the Nexus.
Yep.
Make sure they got the win on this one. And that is a very different ROCCAT than the ROCCAT that beat Fnatic. Even so, they won against Fnatic, now winning game 1 against Splyce. That was a 3-1-10 game out of Faxi. Dominant performance out in that side lane, coming a lot from the draft, of course, but ROCCAT playing very well around things that typically we don't expect out of ROCCAT. Syndra for Betsy, good pick for him here as well.
And I think we have to come back to who we focused on in picks and bans. We said it's on Wadid, it's on Pride Stalker. They're the ones that really need to step up to be able to carry this ROCCAT lineup. Wadid played incredibly well. 14 kills out of 19 he was involved in. Very strong roaming. And then Pride Stalker as well. 13 kills out of 19. Early game focus from him. Great damage across the board. As you say, in this one game, he's done more damage than his entire Warwick career in the LCS. It was just so much cleaner and so much more macro-orientated and so much better strategically from ROCCAT.
It was, and we have to look at that ROCCAT playstyle and how Splyce played a different playstyle that they have succeeded with as well. I see where Splyce were going with the draft. It does make sense, but at the same time, this hasn't been what we know Splyce can do, right? It didn't encompass the 1-3-1 setup effectively because they were running like a teamfight pick with a Rumble. The Rek'Sai isn't necessarily a split push that sometimes we would previously see out of the jungle as well. No more since they changed Rek'Sai. And I just felt like a little underwhelmed from Splyce. I think ROCCAT did very well. I think Splyce didn't really live up to what we've seen from them.
No, well, ROCCAT did get the win to start off the series. Shox and Henning are ready to tell you more.
Well, thank you, Medic. And I actually think, the hanging, is he going to get a fist bump? Yes, smooth. All right, I was going to say that Medic and Stress's height difference is kind of an allegory for how the match went. And then Medic is ROCCAT and Splyce is Stress. And well, what I wanted to highlight especially is that ROCCAT impressed me so much in this game because they did everything right. And no matter how good, of course, if Splyce was more on the ball, they could have offered more counterweight. But if you look at everything, the goal difference over time, except for that little dip, the kills that we can't see here, but on every single one of the carries, Betsy having a huge game, Pride Stalker having consistently a lot of kills and engages, Foxy rather, doing his job, also racking up some kills, but especially with the key on that split push, and then the bottom lane, which always delivers, and the objectives. Man, it was just all good for ROCCAT.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm impressed by ROCCAT. This is a textbook split pushing like play style. Like if you're playing like Gnar and Tryndamere and stuff in solo queue, go watch this game. This is how you're supposed to do it. Not like my solo queue top laners, it just like runs it down top and tries to hit the tower. No, you have to ward the jungle, you have to wait until you have pressure on the other side of the map, you have to get all these things ready, and then you can go to the sideline. And that patience is what impressed me the most about ROCCAT. I mean, they got the bottom lane tower really low like early on in the game, and then Foxy did not like sacrifice himself to get the tower. He waited, and then he got it.
Systematic.
Yeah.
And we saw there in the goal that there was a dip for ROCCAT and a tiny resurgence for Splyce. It is where you pointed out they'll be looking for some team fights. They'll be looking for some picks because they do have a good composition for that. And our first replay is we're going to take a look at that one moment where Splyce said, hey, we are still here. And they managed to get a pick on Betsy.
They gets a good pick on towards Betsy right here, and this is what they want to do. I mean, they pick a losing matchup for Wunder in the top lane just to get the stronger team fights, and this is going to be the team fight afterwards. And this is where Splyce is really strong. This is exactly the kind of fight that they want to take, and like just having a 5 versus 4, that's just icing on the cake at this point. So fighting with like Siren, Rumble in these sort of tight corridors in the jungle, it's exactly what Splyce wants to do. Before this fight, before the pick onto Betsy, ROCCAT had a 3k gold lead afterwards. Splyce gets Baron and equalizes the gold count, even though Senkux gets caught out by Foxy.
That's so frustrating. You're a tank, well, an off tank, but you still tank.
Yeah, doing a lot of that AD damage, and I think this is just... I'm not sure if the Rumble pick was worth it, honestly, for Splyce. They pick it to force the team fights. They were able to do it like once in the entire game, and just losing out in the top side matchup. It's not what you want.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, especially seeing that in that fight, it did come down to kind of pressing the Zhonya's at the right moment, engaging at the right moment, positioning, because even though it was a 4 versus 5, ROCCAT was very far ahead. So Splyce shows that they are very good at skirmishing, and they kind of have a resurgence, but it wasn't long. ROCCAT immediately right after get another fight, or a bit later, they get another fight, they get a couple of kills, they turn on to Baron afterwards, they turn on to Elder Dragon afterwards, and they just play it out super correctly.
Yeah, for sure, ROCCAT just knows what to do on the map with this sort of split-pushing composition. They also have a lot of pick potential with the Syndra and the Thresh. As soon as someone on the side of Splyce missteps, they're going to be caught out. You can't say the same for the side of Splyce, though, as they really didn't have any way of forcing the fights with this sort of team-fighting composition, which is really something that you do want.
Yeah, let's take a look at one of those team fights for ROCCAT, then the ones that they... Well, they had a couple of very well-placed ones, combined with the split push that was absolutely detrimental, and combined with Kalista, who obviously can net you the objective the minute you get an advantage in the team fight after.
Yeah, such a decisive shot calling from ROCCAT. They just know exactly what to do. Everyone goes at the same time, and Foxy just from being able to split push on the side, an absolutely huge. Betsy also makes so quick work on to copy there.
I don't really notice it in fights like this, but Pride Stalker, we say he's done good throughout the entire game. What is his job as Warwick in a messy fight like this?
He's the big front line that's just supposed to be disruptive. He's getting in there and everyone has to deal with him. They have to do something about him. He's not a huge damage dealer, but he's something that...
He's in your face.
It's in your face, he has to be dealt with, and with the damage reduction on the E, that's going to be very hard to do.
Yeah, I was also impressed by Betsy. I said it before in the... It's not a brief pause. In the pause, that Syndra is a pick that usually I wouldn't associate with Betsy too much in terms of carrying, but he stepped up. He did fantastically, as did the entire team. And, well, they net themselves a win. They could be on a way to 3 straight series wins if they can win that next game. So what is it going to come down to? Splyce wasn't able to play their game. Is there a change here? You don't want to see the Rumble, I don't think. Is the Rek'Sai part of the problem? What would you change, Henning?
I think Splyce has to change up the draft. They cannot be happy with what happened in the first game, so either get a winning matchup for Wunder in the top lane, maybe get the cannon as they could have gotten this game, or if you really want to go for this team fight heavy style, which could also work out, you have to get some sort of an initiate or a big engage. Like, you can't rely on Trashy landing the flash on Burrow on the Rek'Sai, because that just didn't... I don't think that happened like once throughout the entire game.
All right, well, they are discussing it right now. Splyce, we'll see what happens. ROCCAT, they look to stay on the winning track against Splyce. Game 2 is right around the corner. Stick around.